And we're back in the car like we never left. Happy hump day to one and all, and welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your happy hump day afternoon with me here in New York. Well, once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Now, many of you know that Hollywood at the end of years, and this is going back generations, will release a movie to a couple of theaters, let's say in late December, and people can go see it, but unless you live in certain urban areas, you're not really going to be able to see it. So, for example, 1978's The Deer Hunter opened in one theater in Los Angeles, I think on December 29th, and one theater in New York City qualify for the Oscars, specifically to qualify for that year's Academy Awards. There are times where movies just get a regular release, even if they're prestige pictures, but just as often as not, and maybe it's not done in the same fashion now, I'm not as up on these things as maybe I was, but everything is different with streaming, and is this going to qualify because it played on Netflix? There's all this other stuff that takes place now that did not exist generations ago. So the film that I'm going to be talking about today, unbelievably, is now 37 years old. It celebrates the 37th anniversary of its release date, its official release date. The film is Norman Jewison's Moonstruck. Now, the reason why I gave you that big wind-up is because Norman Jewison's Moonstruck opened in a couple of theaters in December of 1987 when the studio realized, hey, we have a chance at multiple Oscar nominations and potentially a couple of wins. So the film was wrapped, and even though it had a mid-January release slot, usually films released in January, if they are not released the previous December to qualify for the Oscars, January is when movies are dumped. If it's any good, you're going to qualify it for the Oscars. You understand where I'm going with that. So Moonstruck opened wide January 15, 1988. Now, the Oscar nominations had not been announced yet, but not surprisingly, the advance buzz on this film was very strong, and the film wound up getting 6 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director for the aforementioned Norman Jewison. The 3 Oscars that the movie won were for Cher as lead actress, the always fire Olympia Dukakis as supporting actress, and the playwright turned screenwriter and filmmaker John Patrick Shanley for his original screenplay. Now, I later learned of John Patrick Shanley when I took a class called Modern American Drama at New York University, a decade later or whatever it was. My assumption, and this is why it's so great with Google that you can sort of check your own work or your own memory of things, or just what your instinct tells you with regards to certain movies and who did this and who did that. If someone had asked me an hour ago, did John Patrick Shanley, was Moonstruck a play, or was it originally conceived as a stage play? Given the fact that John Patrick Shanley was first and foremost a playwright, I would have laughed and said, yeah, of course. I would have been wrong. Moonstruck was always intended to be a movie. I'm glad I looked it up, because I would have given you incorrect information. So Moonstruck is a film that, for large chunks, it almost feels like it could have been a stage play. That's the other component of this, where it has a kind of episodic nature, where there are long stretches, long scenes, where, if you are familiar with how the theater works, this could be Act 1, this could be Act 2, you could combine these two things into a longer Act 2. These are elements that I calculated watching this movie not that long ago. I actually watched it. It had a pretty successful run on Netflix. And I don't want to say like 2019 era. And I hadn't seen it in a really long time. And I was impressed. See, 1987 to me is a really good year for movies. There are a lot of movies that from that particular year that I count as near my favorites, whether it's in a certain genre or a certain subgenre. For example, my favorite James Bond film, The Living Daylights, with Timothy Dalton, 1987. My favorite vampire film, The Lost Boys, 1987. My favorite horror film, Sir Alan Parker's Angel Heart, 1987. A lot of big movies. Michael Douglas had the 1-2 punch of Fatal Attraction and Wall Street, for which he won a Best Actor award. Cher, in 1987, this is not an exaggeration, had as good a year that any actor or actress has had in the last 50 years. And I'm telling you, that is not an exaggeration, that she managed to star, not Steve Martin in 1991 starring in Father of the Bride, great, LA Story, great, and having a supporting role in Grand Canyon. Cher in 1987 is the primary character in 3 major motion pictures. Witches of Eastwick, love it. Jack Nicholson's a scream. Michelle Pfeiffer's great. Susan Sarandon's great. Richard Jenkins is great. Veronica Cartwright, amazing. Moonstruck. And then she did a film with another big-time auteur filmmaker, Peter Yates, called Suspect, which is one of the most, at least for 2024, slept-on, great mystery suspense thriller kind of films to come out of Hollywood in the last 4 decades. That's one that you ought to look up. But she is the lead in that movie, a major Hollywood production with a big director. She is the lead in The Witches of Eastwick, as much as Jack kind of steals the movie from everybody. George Miller, big Hollywood production, major director. John Williams, top 5 best non-Superman, non-Star Wars scores for Williams. And Moonstruck, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Now, if you're asking me, do I think that she should have won the Oscar? No. I'll give you a reason why. Her accent is not consistent. And I said the same thing, not that it makes any difference. I'm just a random guy, aged 14 watching Moonstruck for the first time. But when I watched As Good as It Gets, speaking of Jack Nicholson, now I really like that movie. But to my virgin ears, it sounded like Helen Hunt's accent kind of came and went. And it took me out of the fiction to some extent. And I don't think that Cher's Brooklyn accent sustains itself in this movie either. Now, I understand they're just actors, but Meryl Streep, maybe nobody should ever be compared to marvelous Meryl Streep, as Sylvester Stallone famously called her at the Oscars. But Meryl Streep in Bridges of Madison County had a very particular, it wasn't just an Italian accent. It was an Italian accent specific to a region in Italy. And every line of dialogue sounds like she was born there. So I really like what Cher does. And given the fact that I can't even remember offhand who was up for Best Actress in addition to her. Oh, okay. I think Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction, if the movie was better, maybe she would have won and not Cher. Because, man, she is scary as fuck. And the thing with Glenn Close, she's tremendous. I mean, we see her now. She's a character. She's done so many different kind of things, playing a police chief in the TV show The Shield, which was very popular and successful, doing different kinds of roles. World According to Garp in 83, The Natural, one of my favorite movies. But Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction, I feel like the story kind of let her down. And the thing with Moonstruck, and I feel like voters do gauge all of these things. They may have said, accent or not, Cher is just magnificent. Like, I don't think that this was a gift to her because, and here's something, if I had been asked the question, what do I think is Cher's best performance? I think her best performance is in Peter Bogdanovich's Mask, opposite Eric Stoltz, and a lot of pretty believable prosthetics, actually. So the controversy with that, with the movie Mask, there was a lot of talk that she was going to be nominated for Best Actress for that film, and she wasn't. And then she famously wore this really out there, I don't want to say crazy. I mean, who the fuck am I? I don't have any fashion sense. But she wore an outfit to the Oscars, which a lot of people felt was inappropriate. And they felt that it was a response. It was her way, in her very, very creative, almost devilish, before Witches of Eastwick, but almost devilish way of giving the MPAA, the double middle finger salute. That was just her way. She didn't curse anybody out. She didn't lose her temper. Every now and then at the Oscars, you'll see somebody when the wrong name is named. That fuck. It doesn't happen often because they are actors. But Cher's performance is really strong in this film. But sometimes you're helped along by a stunning supporting turn. And in this movie, the fact that Olympia Dukakis won the supporting actress Oscar, she's great. And John Mahoney, another fantastic actor on stage and screen and on TV, you know, playing Frasier's dad for so many years on the TV show Frasier. But the key character here in this movie is Nicolas Cage, who is still very much wet behind the ears, very much finding his footing in the movie business. And he plays Ronnie, the younger brother of a character played by another terrific actor, the late, great Danny Aiello. Man, I love Danny Aiello. So good in The Professional or Leon. So amazing in Jacob's Ladder with Tim Robbins. I mean, he's almost the best thing about Jacob's Ladder. He's the only grounded character. He keeps bringing us back to reality as the film is pulling us into supernatural, occult directions. And there's Danny Aiello as Louis saying, no, it's okay. It's okay. Jacob, you're going to be fine. Don't worry, Louis is here. Amazing performer. But Nicolas Cage, in 1986, the previous year's Peggy Sue Got Married, that's a Francis Coppola film, and I feel that is the most underrated movie in Coppola's career, unless you want to go with The Rainmaker. But see, the thing is, The Rainmaker got mostly really good reviews, but I still feel that it was underrated because it was Coppola. Maybe people are expecting The Godfather, even then, every time out of the box. But Peggy Sue Got Married is a really terrific film, released in the shadow of Back to the Future. I think that kind of hurt it because, at least in theory, the concepts are very similar. They both seem to deal with time travel. Back to the Future for sure deals with time travel. Peggy Sue Got Married has time travel elements. I don't actually think it's a time travel movie, but Nicolas Cage's performance in that film was criticized in some quarters. And to this day, there are people that will rank it because Cage he's such an incredible talent. He's capable, like his buddy John Travolta, he's capable of giving a really shitty performance. I feel like if you don't have a lot of range, you just know how to deliver your lines, you could do the old Jeff Fahey. Oh, I love Jeff Fahey, but he has a very minimalist acting style. Even in movies with Clint and White Hunter, Black Heart, Jeff Fahey is great within a narrow range. You can't give a terrible performance if you use or if you have a minimalist acting style, or if this is just how you deliver your lines. Nicolas Cage can be huge. He can be broad, as can John Travolta. Now, I happen to like Nicolas Cage's performance in Peggy Sue Got Married, and I don't really understand the hate. Yeah, the character is a bit overwrought, but he's believable as a kid and as the adult 25 years later. But in Moonstruck, he makes the film. He makes the movie. And if you want to say it's an unusual pairing, Cher already is significantly older than him, but they don't seem that different in age, at least not to me. Nicolas Cage had the kind of face where he appeared older than he was. So, for example, I mentioned Peggy Sue Got Married. Kathleen Turner was in her early 30s when that film was shot. And Nicolas Cage maybe he was 21 or 22. And Jim Carrey, of course, was very young in that film as well. And the Cage in this movie dials back. Yeah, he has moments where he goes wacky, but he doesn't do anything with his voice. He doesn't do any, and this is where he got criticized with Peggy Sue Got Married, that his vocal inflections and just the manner that people just felt that he fucked up, that the character was just, that the movie would have been better if Coppola's nephew had played this in a more straightforward manner. As Jim Carrey, for a lot of his time in that film, he's reading his lines like a normal actor and not, oh my God, that's Jim Carrey. But what Cage does in this movie, the character of Ronnie is, his central conflict, his big problem is not really, he's carrying around anger and hate in his heart that should not be there. And one thing this movie does so well, at least for me, is it gets to the heart, no pun intended, of damaged people who may not necessarily behave in a righteous way, but who end up doing what's right for them. And the film is a very warm-hearted. Vincent Gardenia, a terrific older actor. He was with Bronson in Death Wish 15 years earlier. He plays Mushnick in Little Shop of Horrors with Ellen Greene and the great Rick Moranis. And he was up for supporting actor. But Vincent Gardenia, his character, he's married to Olympia Dukakis, the mom, and he's He's stepping out on her. But Cher's character has agreed to marry Danny Aiello, and she's hooking up with the brother. You know, it sounds sexier than it is. It sounds more, oh my God, this is incredible. What a scandal. But the movie is arguing that if you aren't happy, you shouldn't agree to marry. You should not agree to be in a relationship unless it's something you're sure you want to do. Don't allow yourself to get boxed in. And the film doesn't necessarily make excuses for either or any of the characters. It doesn't even really agree with Nicolas Cage's point, because you're waiting for this explanation why he has a problem with his own brother. And you say, well, how is that even his fault? And that was my thought. And then the characters are actually, so I like when characters almost act as the eyes and the voice of the audience, where they ask the same question that we're asking. And it's just tremendous. So Nicolas Cage, as he's a baker, and he's the brother of Danny Aiello's character. And he and Cher fall in love. They fall in love in the world of the film. And the pairing is believable. It makes sense. It feels right. And Olympia Dukakis, the scene that won her the Academy Award, more or less, is a scene where Cher is explaining why she's marrying Danny Aiello's character. And I don't necessarily think that somebody would explain the situation this way, but Olympia Dukakis is just amazing in this scene where she basically says, she asks the question, do you love him? And she kind of says, no. Sweetie, that's better that way. Now, I don't agree with that, but the way that she just sort of casually says, yeah, it's better that way, because when he fucks you over, more or less, she doesn't say that, but the idea is it's not going to hurt as much when it goes wrong, because you don't care as much. It's not that big a deal. I don't agree. That's something that the movie throws at you that, no. But it works. And we believe that this character, presumably her husband, is not just suddenly now stepping out on her. Maybe he's had multiple women over the years. We don't really know. But the moment, what could be a moment of horror for both characters, is not played the way that you would expect. And it works. Because when Cher runs into her dad out on the town, I don't know if they're at the movies, I don't remember where they're going, but neither behaves the way that you expect, because both of them, as much as they want to get on, he wants to get on the daughter, and she, oh my God, my dad, they're both doing things that they probably should not be doing. And they kind of very quickly, yeah, we're just going to pretend that we didn't see this, the old, I was never here, we never had this conversation. And it works. When I think of Best Actor, Best Actress winners, this is a rare case where I feel like a supporting performer spurred the person to win. Like every scene that Cher plays with Nicolas Cage, you feel her really striving and giving everything she has, because he's such a live wire. And whatever people might say about Cage's performance style, and they've been debating, well, is this guy even any good, for decades, you can tell that she thinks he's fantastic. And she's trying to match his energy. She's trying to match whatever particular magic Nicolas Cage has. She's trying to get there. And I believe, despite whatever issues I have where it seems like the accent isn't consistent, she matches it. And if you want to say this is her best performance, I will say Mask. I would say that she was, I don't know about winning Best Actress, but she certainly was robbed of an Oscar nomination for that film, 100%. And Peter Bogdanovich, recently, I don't know about recently, but he's passed. He's somebody who didn't have the career that he should have, but he still made some really great movies. So this was a box office hit. The film was a box office hit. It grossed over $80 million on a budget, and it did not have a big marketing. They didn't put a big marketing blitz on it. The budget is listed, if you look this up, at somewhere around $12 million. So it grossed just about 7 times its production cost in the United States alone. And I don't need to tell you, that is a big pull. And Part of that presumably was because it was released wide, as I said, during a soft time of the year. This is a really good movie. Even though it didn't win Best Picture, that was the year that Bernardo Bertolucci's The Last Emperor ended up winning the big hardware, the big Best Picture. And it is readily available on streaming. I think it's free on Tubi. It might be on Paramount Plus, but I'm not sure about that. But this is absolutely worth seeing. It is a terrific film, beautifully acted. At times feels like a stage play, but at other times feels like a motion picture, but a really wonderful, it's very, very funny. All of the actors come to, bring their A game. And, Moonstruck, 37 years old today, released wide on this day, 1988. This has been episode 410 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me in the car on this, hopefully for you, happy hump day in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.